Hello. Hello.
Era when recognition of unions was fundamentally denied. Um, Commons and to a lesser extent Ely, it seems to me, at least from my perspective, had a problem with class as a category of analysis. They sought, in many ways, they sought harmony and reconciliation in a world where that was polarized and deeply divided, and in which corporations were fundamentally opposed to labor. Darryl has noted that they rationalized and in some ways gave legitimacy to a capitalist order within which labor could function and be a partner. The conflict between Commons and his sidekick, Charles McCarthy, on the one hand, and Frank Walsh on the other, who were involved in the US Commission on Industrial Relations in the early teens, highlighted those limitations, it seems to me. Whereas Commons and McCarthy were very eager to find reconciliation and instruments or institutions of mediation, Walsh and his allies were very much focused on workers' empowerment and the defense of their rights. And whereas Commons thought about administrative solutions, Walsh and others were very intent on building the right to collective bargaining. And so I'm not trying to revive an old battle, as Darryl has described it, between the old labor history and the new. And I very much appreciate that he didn't speak to it directly in his oral presentation, but I appreciate his invocation of David Brody's efforts to find common ground between the old and the new labor history. But it also seems to me it's essential to keep in broader focus the work that needs to be done going forward, that we and as workers and as historians, particularly in this era when workers and their unions are being hammered, need to do. We've tended to juxtapose, we, meaning the new labor historians, labor organizations and social movements. But the labor movement at its best is a social movement. It's bigger than unions. It includes cooperatives and political organization, an oppositional working class culture, and a class-based social vision. The new labor history, it seems to me, brought into focus the social history of the working class to ask the question, who is the working class after all? And for many of us, it was organized and unorganized workers. And it was important to maintain that kind of broader perspective beyond just the organized working class. And we ask to broaden our reach and shift our focus to consider subjects that had been neglected by Commons and Ely and Perlman and their disciples. And one of the closest to my heart is the Knights of Labor, which Darryl mentioned. And Knights of Labor was very badly underserved by the old labor history. It had the breadth of a social movement. It was a class-based movement. And in spite of the posturing of Powderly and some of the leadership, it was very deeply grounded in working class communities and working class struggles. And it seems to me the new labor history has helped elevate the Knights of Labor and helped us understand it as a social movement, as a working class social movement in a way that had been neglected in the past. The IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World, engaged a new industrial working class in the early 20th century of immigrants, of marginal workers, of the unskilled, that was largely being ignored by the AFL and was being left on the margins of organizing efforts. The early organizing of the New Deal era, the 1933 to 35 period, the so-called NRA strikes in Toledo and Minneapolis, San Francisco, in the southern textile fields, suggested new possibilities for class-wide collective action before the CIO came into existence as an institution. And again, it's important to understand that class struggle context in which the CIO was ultimately born, and the important New Deal legislation. And I certainly don't want to contradict what Darryl was suggesting about the importance that the Wisconsin school and its practitioners had in shaping that legislation. But as he alluded to, and as I think is important to keep in focus, there was a popular struggle going on that was giving birth to that legislation in powerful ways. And without it, it's hard to imagine.
That's right.
Pardon me? Oh, did somebody say anyway? And, you know, for instance, there were other kind of models of unionism that were being spawned in that fertile period of the early New Deal. Peter Ratcliffe has talked about a lot about the Independent Union of All Workers in Austin, Minnesota, that envisioned a community-wide, sort of going back to the Knights of Labor model of how to organize. That drew in marginal workers who would have difficulty organizing on their own right, but in the context of an industrial union could be important, could have important benefits. I think of the radical union at Alice Chalmers, Local 248, that Steve Meyer did so much important work to document as another incarnation of that social movement tradition in the labor movement. I'm thinking about women and African Americans who brought new energy into the 1960s and 70s from social movements that gave rise to, as Lane Wyndham has talked about, a whole new wave of organizing, particularly in the South, but elsewhere as well. And then I'm thinking about the worker centers today and the way they embody that new energy. I'm involved with the Center for Worker Justice of Eastern Iowa, and you know, we're very much fighting with employers' wage theft and trying to defend workers' rights to health and safety and protecting immigrants against ICE and a whole lot of other struggles that are not peripheral to the labor movement, but nor are they necessarily central. And the labor movement has been a great ally in many cases in giving birth to or giving support to these worker centers. So I think we need a flexible approach to organizing workers today, inside and outside of traditional unions. We need to find a place for contingent workers and domestic workers and workers who are on the margins and unprotected by traditional labor laws and collective bargaining and from the social benefits of social legislation. I'm thinking particularly of the millions of undocumented immigrants who, particularly in this pandemic, as we've seen in our own communities, have not had access to the benefits that the federal government, limited though they have been, have offered, and who are surviving very much on the margins of this struggling economy. So I look back to the founding of the Wisconsin Labor History Society as a terrific achievement, a new direction in public history, a coalition of labor academics and the public that is a powerful, powerful model, as I've suggested. And it takes me back to those early days where, for me, the Wisconsin Labor History Society was a breath of fresh air. I was working for the State Historical Society, coordinating the Office of Local History, and mostly working with county and local historical societies. And although they did good work, they were preserving local history and telling local stories, they were essentially telling historical stories that were top down, but within a local context. They focused on local elites, on social harmony, on uncontested narratives, and were kind of boosterists in their focus. And so for me, the founding of the Wisconsin Labor History Society, where it was possible to talk about class and to talk about class conflict and to have commemorations for things like the Bayview Massacre and to acknowledge that that's part of our history and a part of our community's history, was so important. Your annual commemorations have been, though mostly viewed from a distance, have been really inspiring. And as I say, you have been a model for those of us working in other states who are trying to build comparable organizations and do comparable work, and to ally our state labor movements and local labor leaders with academics and public historians. Over the years, the Iowa AFL-CIO sponsored a project called the Iowa Labor History Oral Project, which has interviewed about 1,500 workers since the late 1970s and has been a foundation on which the new Iowa Labor History Society is seeking to build. The focus is shifted now to the history of public sector workers to a large extent who face their own challenges, like the ones yours face, from a reactionary state legislature, and in our case, from a retrograde governor, our own Scott Walker. But to me, our labor history societies, built through grassroots cooperation of trade unionists, scholars, educators, and the public, hold the promise of keeping alive an interest in workers' struggles, influencing public discourse, and training a new generation of young people who are eager to find a usable past. And we're the bearers of that usable past, in my view. And so congratulations on 40 unbelievable years of terrific work. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Shel. That was a great recitation. And then somebody else who, by the way, if you do want to speak later on, do put the word "speak" into the chat room, and we'll make sure we pick you up. Harry Miller was also with the State Historical Society at that time as an archivist, and we've got him to comment on what Darryl said, and Shel, I guess, and a little bit about our early history. So Harry, unmute yourself and speak on.
Okay, well, I think I'm unmuted, and I hope everyone can hear me.
You're fine. Yeah.
Good. And it is good to see some faces that I haven't seen for a long time. I'll try to keep my comments very brief. I don't have the academic background that Shel has, nor do I have the practical experience of Joanne and Darryl. But I did have a position at the Historical Society that let me spend a lot of time with John R. Commons and Richard T. Ely, and even with Samuel Gompers, in the sense that the Historical Society holds a collection of papers and records of Commons and Ely and the records of the AFL. So I'm kind of I have some sympathy with Commons and Ely, and I have some sympathy with the Wisconsin school, because I really did, I spent months and months reading their letters and looking at considering what they were trying to do, and to a degree what they accomplished. I think both Shel and Darryl really kind of gave us a good picture of the founding of the Wisconsin Labor History Society and its reason for being. It seems pretty clear to me that it's accomplished what Shel outlined there, is bringing together various groups of people, from rank and file to union officials to activists and some academics. In the longer version of Darryl's paper, he talks about the Wisconsin idea and the role of academics. And to me, the Wisconsin Labor History Society was formed out of a respect for the accomplishments of the labor movement in Wisconsin, and out of a desire to link up with people maybe not directly involved in the labor movement, but people in academics and activists as well. And I think the Labor History Society shared one thing, and probably still does share one thing with the institutional economists in the Wisconsin school, is a feeling that if we kind of look back and honor those who preceded us in the labor movement, it does also help, by understanding what they did, it does also help chart a course. And that's what the rationale that I thought was behind society when it was formed. I'll just make a couple comments on the Wisconsin school and so on. again, in the longer version of Darryl's paper, he talks a little bit about the Wisconsin idea. He talks about, and he talked this morning about why Wisconsin. Why did these labor reforms or working class reforms or political reforms, whatever you want to call them, why did they happen in Wisconsin? And he rightfully pointed out the role of organized labor, the history of organized labor going back into the 1870s and 80s as making this a logical place. And he certainly mentioned the socialists and social democrats in Milwaukee. I guess I would just add a little bit too, that these things took place during what historians call the progressive era. And the progressive era is sort of in my mind, the antithesis of the Reagan 80s and 90s. There's that famous quote from Reagan about government being the problem. Well, in the progressive era, they didn't think, the general society didn't necessarily think that government was the problem. They felt that society, organized society, and government being a part of that could solve some of the problems, economic and social, that the labor economists defined as the labor problem, that set of social and economic problems that they gave that title to. And that's really what Ely and Commons and Whitty and Helen Sumner and Elizabeth Brandeis and the generation, and it really was a multi-generational group that the Wisconsin school spawned. So Darryl and Shel talked about the sort of turning away from the Wisconsin school in the 70s and 80s, and Darryl talked about the turning away in the field of economics from the institutionalists. Those things happened kind of simultaneously, I think. And in my very maybe amateurish view of history, I think it's a little bit cyclical. And I'm kind of hoping that we are coming into an era with the Biden presidency where there is some faith in government to take a role, just as there was in the progressive era. And I think we're seeing the beginnings of some efforts for the federal government to take a role. So I'm hoping we're entering another cycle where society can act through its government to change to address some of the problems we have. And that doesn't, by no means does that mean that the Wisconsin School of Labor historians knew it all or had it all right. Back in the 70s and 80s, when those folks, and again, I admit my sort of sympathy with them after getting to know them in a way that's pretty hard to do. But I always thought that the criticism was a little unfair. These were a group of people with a certain background, and certainly they did accept the economic and social, and they didn't accept the status quo, but they accepted the system and tried to tinker with it. But I always thought it was a little unfair because they set their own plan. They set an agenda, and they largely, I think, accomplished that agenda. Their agenda was making improvements in the institutions that existed and using government to make that improvement. What they didn't do, they didn't set out to do. So I always thought the criticism was a little unfair. If it was criticism, it should be for setting the wrong agenda, making the wrong plans, because all they did was work on what they said they were going to do, and they did a pretty good job of it. And is it really fair to be critical for something that really wasn't a part of the plan that they set out to, or the set of problems that they wanted to solve? And this is not to say that they knew it all, or that, and certainly the activism of the 70s and 80s and going now, and the way and the things that Shel talked about, the social problems that weren't addressed, are more than valid. But as I say, I have a little sympathy with those folks. And it seems to me that social order isn't going to change drastically, at least not in the near term, and trying to work with what we have is a valuable asset. So that's kind of my view of it. I think that Darryl did a superb job. It's a great way to set up this 40th anniversary meeting by looking back and looking at why Wisconsin and where it came from. And I think Shel is right on with his analysis of the strengths of the Wisconsin Labor History Society. And it's a great day to celebrate those strengths.
Well, thank you very much, Harry. And of course, you were in at the beginning, so we owe a debt of gratitude to you and all of the other early founders. And the next responder is our own Joanne Ricca. Now, Joanne has been around since the first meeting as well. But more importantly, Joanne has been the ongoing glue that has kept us together. And she has been very good in us. I have been either president or president emeritus for this organization, believe it or not, since 1992, which means next year it'll be 30 years. And wow. And all this time, Joanne has been keeping track of things, making sure we do things when it's on time, kind of, if I can use, no, I'm not going to use that term because it's sexist. And anyway, we are so grateful for her because I don't think the Labor History Society would be around today in the form we are without her 40 years of contributions. So Joanne, tell us a bit about those early days, and then we'll take a few questions because time is moving on. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ken, for those very kind comments. I'd just like to recognize the people who played a significant role in bringing the society to this remarkable anniversary. As Shel said, he headed the Office of Local History at the Wisconsin Historical Society in 1981, and it was his idea to consider forming a local labor history society. And Shel asked some of us to sign an invitation that went out to 65 individuals and labor councils in Wisconsin, inviting them to a meeting. And those who signed were Jim Kavanaugh, who's with us today at this meeting. He was with the Wisconsin Historical Society. He was working on enhancing the labor collection at the society. William Blue Jenkins, who was an African-American labor leader in Racine. He was president of a UAW local and also president of the Racine Labor Council. Harvey Kay, a professor at UW Green Bay, Department of Social Change and Development, who couldn't be with us today. Barbara Morford, who is on this Zoom here, and she was with the School for Workers, and she was director of the Women and Workplace Project. John Schmidt signed, who was president of the Wisconsin AFL-CIO, and I did as I was with the Coalition of Labor Union Women at that time. As a result of that invitation, there were 26 of us who gathered at the State Historical Society in May of 1981 with great enthusiasm for the idea of a society. We created an interim board, which I volunteered to chair, but Shel and other historical society staff continued to provide key support for our efforts. Those staff were Jim Kavanaugh, Harry Miller, Michael Gordon, and Dale Trelevin. They wrote the early newsletters and helped us create our bylaws and file our incorporation documents. and we are affiliated with the Wisconsin Historical Society. Our interim board then began to plan the first conference, and that was held a year later in May 1982 with a great turnout of about 150 people at Turner Hall in Milwaukee. The main topic was Milwaukee labor in the 1940s. Actually, Steve Meyer, who we held in memory at the beginning of this session, was one of the speakers. A highlight was the labor history bus tour of Milwaukee, created by former socialist mayor Frank Zeidler. It was there we elected our first official board. I continued as president. Harvey Kay of UW Green Bay was vice president. Dorina Rasmussen with the Office and Professional Employees Union was secretary, and Harry Miller with the State Historical Society was treasurer. The board members were David Newby and Darryl Holter with the Wisconsin Federation of Teachers, Sue Weibel from AFSCME, Ralph Jurakowic, the Milwaukee County Labor Council, Florence Simons, the Allied Industrial Workers, and Kelly Sparks, the UAW. In the early years, our meetings were held in board members' homes. We took turns holding the meetings. Our secretary, Dorina, wrote the membership information on index cards in a file box. She typed the mailing labels on her typewriter with carbon paper to make extra copies. Just one example of the quiet dedication that helped build the society. Darryl Holter took over from me as president and served for 6 years until he moved to California, which was our major loss. Then Ken Germanson took the reins and served as president for an astounding 17 years. And he is still at the heart of whatever we do. We are fortunate now to have President Steve Caperi, who has been a passionate guiding force for 12 years. We owe so much to the dedication of the officers and board members, some 64 people who have served since 1981, and they will be recognized in an upcoming newsletter. It's a tribute to all of them that we are one of the most active labor history societies in the country, and that we can celebrate this amazing accomplishment with great hope for the future. There is no doubt that the early endorsement of John Schmidt, president of the Wisconsin AFL-CIO, encouraged turnout for our founding meeting. He signed that original invitation. John was also featured speaker at our first conference at Turner Hall, and he gave the society the standing to reach the broader labor movement. His support and that of successive presidents of the AFL-CIO, including David Newby, who is here today, was vital in building a strong labor foundation over the decades. From the start, the society has been committed to have both academic and labor communities on the board and represented in our programs. This blend has broadened support and made the society more effective and respected. And most important, the financial support of our faithful membership of individuals and unions has made all of our work possible. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Joanne. And Darryl,
can I just respond?
Yeah,
briefly?
Go ahead.
I just want to respond just briefly to the three commentators, and I want to thank you all. Particularly, I want to thank you for reading that 27-page thing that I wrote, which I know, it was really more of a think piece for me to get my hands around it than anything else. But I wanted to just say something about the whole way that we think about things. If you listen to what Shel said, if you listen to what Harry said, if you listen to what Joanne said, you'll understand exactly the thesis behind what I was trying to say, which is to say this: if you take what Harry talked about the Wisconsin school, if you think about what Harry talked about, and if you think about what Shel talked about, you have there the thesis and antithesis that we've been talking about with the Wisconsin school and the new labor history. Value in both views, and they've emphasized that, and it's there. And then if you think about what Joanne talks about, there's the synthesis. There's the bringing together of the old and the new in the institutional framework. So that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if we have time for a couple of comments, or actually questions, and keep it short. Just put something in the chat who wants to do it. I think, John, did you say you wanted to speak? And keep it brief, please. John Rivette? I guess not. Does anybody else wish to speak?
This is Judy Gatlin.
Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Thank you. I'm from way up north, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So I travel 4 hours to go to these meetings, which I love. This isn't going to be a quick answer, but very ideology is this current situation between organized labor and the law enforcement. Some things I'm reading is it's going to be good for labor. Some things I read said it's not going to be for labor. And Ken summed it up very well in a blog. But since that blog, there's been more murders, if you want to call them that. I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't call that. And I have a law enforcer, a policeman in my family, and we can't talk about anything. So I just wanted to know what your comments were on that, specifically, Brother Darryl. Thank you.
I'm not really an expert on this, and I'm from Minneapolis originally, and my family's up there, and there's a lot of division and discussion about these things. I do also know a little bit about the relationships that we had with the police unions in Wisconsin, and they weren't always the best in some ways. And I think, and I don't really want to go too far into this, we've got other things to talk about, but I do hope that the new Biden administration, and more than that, I think at the local level, we've got 18,000 different police forces or police groups. I think that some reforms are really needed, and I think that will help everyone.
Anybody else?
Ken, can I chat for a minute? It's going to be very brief.
Go ahead, Jillian.
Thank you. I just feel very honored to be here with you all. Like 40 years, that's like immense. That's longer than I've been alive. By 3 years, so I'm getting there. But Darryl, am I wrong to think that you wrote something about the milk strikes in the Wisconsin Magazine of History?
There's a section in my book, Workers and Unions in Wisconsin, that is on the milk strike, yes. And some great images, some great photos.
Thank you. I drew on that for my dissertation. So Joanne, thank you. Judy, Harry Miller, Shel, this is very honored to be here with you all.
Okay, anybody else? Excuse me for being awkward here. This old man has a terrible cramp in his thigh. So, anybody else? And if not, Shel or Harry or Joanne, do you have anything further to say before we move on? No, I think it was a very stimulating discussion, and I hope most of you do agree with that. And I think we have, and thank you, Darryl and Shel and Harry and Joanne, for your congratulations on the Society's 40th anniversary. So, Steve, I think we can.
Let me just say,
go ahead, Shel.
Keep it going for the next 40 years. And we're all looking to you and for an example of how we can do the same thing in our own communities. So congratulations.
I would like to say that we have joined on at the inspiration of folks from the Pacific Northwest Labor History Association and Larry Spivak of the Illinois Labor History Society to form and have started. Some of you have have been part of those meetings, the Labor History Collaborative or Network for the United States and Canada. And so we had a forum in March. We had 118 people show up, and it looks like a pretty good beginning for this group, because we're trying to spread the role that labor and worker history have in our society. As you all know, when we went through high school, we learned about Andrew Carnegie and J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller. And who's this guy, Gompers, and so on and so forth. And we also never really found out that there were plumbers and industrial workers who have made history, and we want to keep that in the forefront. So with that, I think we'll close this section of our meeting and start our annual meeting. And Steve, go ahead now, and I'll put the agenda up on the screen.
And before any of you leave, I just want to pick up on what Jillian just mentioned, because Jillian helped us formulate the theme and get our speaker for our upcoming fall conference. We've moved the conference away from this spring into the fall. November 6th, Saturday, November 6th is our tentative date here in Milwaukee. And she's contacted Naomi Williams from Rutgers, who has agreed to be one of our keynote speakers. And she'll be talking about progressives, populists, and socialists and their role in building a just and fair nation. So we're sort of continuing the theme that all of you have talked about, and making history relevant. Each year when we plan our conferences, we try to look forward and say, what challenges will labor be meeting in the coming year? And then we pick a topic that draws on history that helps inform us on how to sort of look at that particular topic and equip people to participate in that discussion and whatever action is going on around that. So thanks a lot, Jillian. In fact, if we go back and look at our recent conferences that we've had, many of our younger board members have been instrumental in picking the topic and helping us identify speakers. And so having a diverse board, both in terms of ages and races and unions, certainly helps us, I think, continue to be vibrant as an organization. So I think that's it in terms of transition. So we'll commence with our membership meeting. Certainly any of you who are not members right now, who are participating today, are welcome to continue to join us. And we'll start out with a financial report. And as Judy, I think, is on, Robin was unable to be with us, I think, today. And
yeah, actually, I think I will be probably doing that. I was just going to bring it up on the screen if I can find it.
Ken's finding it. I think those of you who maybe have not participated in our meetings recently will be pleased to see that we continue to be financially vibrant, and our membership base continues to grow. And Ken's report will certainly reflect that.
Yeah, if we can find it.
I
I had it up. I thought I had this all prepared for everything, you know, but it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. I have it in an email, Ken.
But I do have it now. Thank you much.
Thanks, Judy.
Okay.
Well, I thought I had it. Okay, bring it up then. I'll try. I'm sorry about that.
While you're doing that, why don't I just skip down and talk a little bit about the minutes?
Yeah.
And then when you find it, let me know and we'll just pick up.
Who was it that said they had it and we're going to bring it up?
What's that? The
No, I
minutes?
think.
Oh, Judy.
Judy Gatlin?
No, Judy B.
No. Judy B. Right.
Okay, I'll make you a co-host, Judy.
No, wait, I gotta find it. It's in my email. And I'll-
That's all right. I had it and it just won't come up properly.
Oh.
I got it here.
Steve, did you hear my comment or not?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
That's okay. If our dues are paid up, we can comment and or vote,
Yes,
even if we don't live in Wisconsin.
of course.
Oh, yes, by all means.
Absolutely.
Are you going to have a chat open after the meeting, by the way?
We
You
can.
and or Ken or both, or?
Sure, we can do
Oh,
that.
we can stick around, sure.
I had a
Yeah,
couple
absolutely.
things I wanted to say that I waited on.
Okay.
They're more personal.
Sure.
All right, here is the budget, which reflects our financial strength right here. You'll see on the income side, we've got the 2020 actual, and we had budgeted up to 28. We got, but a lot of that is due to the way we collect our dues. Our dues come due at the end of the year, but we continue to collect well into the succeeding year, because as you can see in 2020 actual, we had 12,800 paid in dues and already 3,320. And this was as of January. I think it was updated in April. And then as you look down.
This is Ken.
I'm sorry, who's?
Ken, this is the last one I put together right up to before I came out here.
Yeah, that comes up to early April, right? And so as you can see, if you look at the actual expenses for 2020 versus what we brought in, we were a little behind. But as it begins this year, it does look like, and we have got the budget set up here, which you can see, the annual conference. We hope to hold it in person, and we gain about $4,000 in income if we hold an in-person thing. And based on that, we have had extremely good success thanks to many locals and labor councils throughout the state. Some 70 of them contribute every year into our labor history in the schools fund. Lori Wormter runs the legacy fund and has been getting at least over $1,000 each year, and that helps pay for the Zeidler awards for graduate and undergraduates papers on Wisconsin history. And the expenses are show there. The, of course, major expense is on personnel, and basically Judy gets $5,500 a month for maintaining the books, doing all of the data upkeep, getting membership mailings out, and the whole works. And so that's part of it. I get $200 for my few services. And then last year we did employ an intern from the University of Wisconsin Journalism School to do some writing for us. He got 600. That's the major cost we got. So that's the budget for 2021 in front of you. So I guess we need a motion to pass.
Is there a motion to approve or any discussion?
Gatlin motion to approve the financial report as presented.
Is there a second?
I'd second it, but then I have a question.
Go ahead.
Who set Germanson's rate so low?
It's a labor of love.
Everything he's been
I
doing.
think he
his whole
insisted
career is
on it, as I
labor,
recall.
a love of labor.
Yes, that too.
I mean, can you afford to give him a little more? He didn't ask me to do this. In fact, he
No,
mentioned
you know, if you'd
why
like to.
so little for
Well,
all.
I think, to be honest with you, I don't want any more, John. And as Steve said, I get great compensation just working with all the great folks that I've known through the years.
Well, as you said, I will be criticized for being sexist. You're such a sweetheart. It's just amazing all that you've done for Wisconsin and labor history across North America.
Yeah, here, here.
Thank you. Okay, anything?
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion's carried. And then while we're waiting for the, while I'm going to address the issue of the minutes, and while we're doing that, Ken, if you could bring up the president's report.
Sure.
And then I'll be ready to talk about that. So we have a new secretary, and so our outgoing secretary, unfortunately, has not been able to, put together the minutes from last year's meeting, and so what we do have is a recording, and people who are interested in certainly listening to last year's meeting, we're welcome to share that link and recording with you. And so I don't, unfortunately, have minutes to approve here. Okay. Any further discussion or questions about that? All right, and our new secretary, by the way, is Jacqueline Kelly, and she is from the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, and has been doing our social media and been active with us as a volunteer for a couple of years now. And so we're really pleased to have her on our board. So anyway. In terms of the president's report, that's a good transition into it, is that, we really are who we are and successful because we have such an incredibly active board, and they do shape everything we do. It's very participatory, and we enjoy our meetings, enjoy our conversations, and the collegiality that comes with both. So just in terms of, I'll go briefly over, what we've done for the year. Again, our 40th anniversary conference I've covered. We'll be deferring that to November 6th. I mentioned what the topic is. The 2020 conference, unfortunately, we had to cancel that due to the pandemic. We continue to give our Lifetime Achievement Award, and last year's award went to State Senator Dave Hansen, Democrat from Green Bay. And you may know that he helped author the Labor History in the Schools Act that made labor history part of the state's school curriculum. Archives, I think Darryl will be happy to know that we're continuing to work on curating those archives and putting them together, and so there's been a lot of work done on that actually over the last past year. In terms of the mapping project, we inherited a mapping project from Scuffle, the Madison Area Labor Council, and we've continued to do some work on that in the past year and hope to get that up in our next year. Our website, we did some major revisions on our website this past year, and we have still a few things to do on it, but please check it out. Made it much more easy to work with and also to join as a member. Bayview Tragedy, last year we did it on May, last year we did it virtually, and we're going to do the same thing this year. We'll stream it live. Our event for this year will be on May 2nd, and it looks to be exciting. And we've put that together with the Bayview Historical Society as well. Plays a role in that. And you can scroll down a little bit. In terms of labor history in the schools, we've continued to do our outreach with students through both our labor history essay contest and National History Day. Much of this work helps young folks talk with their parents and family members about their own histories in the labor movement and pass those lessons on from generation to generation. And so it's very rewarding work, continues to be rewarding work, and we're happy to have that relationship with the State Historical Society as well. The Frank Zeidler Academic Awards, again, thanks to Vice President Wormter, we continue to have a very vibrant legacy fund, and we'll be doing, we note there that the winner of the graduate award last year was Alani Shermer, a doctoral student from the University of Wisconsin. And we'll have several awards this year, and those awards we will present at our November 6th conference. Our membership is up and growing, so thanks again to the organizing work of board members. We've talked about Steve Meyer and Michael and our loss there. And looking ahead, we'll be doing, we have as I mentioned earlier, Jacqueline Kelly is our new board member, and we'll be doing a lot of interesting work, certainly with us in the future year. So that's it for a summary of our work. Is there a motion to accept the president's report?
I'll make a motion to accept the president's report. This is Jessica.
Jess Gibson.
Catlin, second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. And our next item, Futures Committee report from Jacqueline Kelly.
Yeah, Jacqueline, I'm going to bring it up, but just start.
Sure. Okay, so Labor History Society Board convened a futures committee to start thinking about, the future of the organization to ensure that it remains strong and vital and solvent and everything into the future. The folks on the committee included, let me just scroll through here. Steve, obviously, Joanne Ricca, myself, Lori Wormter, David Newby, Jillian Jacqueline, Ken Germanson, and Beth Joswiak. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody.
That's it.
Who was attending those meetings. We met several times through the end of last year and the beginning of this year, and we developed several recommendations that the committee felt would help keep the organization strong. So I will just run through them here. Ken, actually, I think I can screen share.
So
here
I've
as
got
well.
it up here. It just, my screen is loaded up and so just give me a second and I'll be okay.
Sure. I'll just start talking through them and then folks can read them once Ken puts it up on the screen. The first recommendation was to revamp the mission statement. And that was tackled by Jillian Jacqueline, Beth Joswiak, and Lori Wormter. The draft statement that they created was endorsed in principle with some changes suggested, and the subcommittee is going to further consider revising the statement. The second recommendation was creating a membership committee to become active in an ongoing way to review the means of attracting new and younger members, as well as to consider ways to gain more organizational members. The recommendation included naming a chair to ensure that this work continues in an ongoing way, and including tasks such as review a list of delinquent members and develop lists to contact those folks, developing lists of prospective new members, promote fundraising through memorial gifts, and at each meeting, report and discuss. And this was approved. Another recommendation was to create funding levels within the Datesman Fund up to $1,000. And so the action was for the board to continue the following motion of grants up to $1,000 may be awarded under the Rose and George Datesman Local Labor History Grant Program. And the awarding of each grant would be made by an agreement of a majority of the board. So those grants that can be distributed out to organizations or individuals around the state to support their research and presentation of labor history, of local labor history. The next recommendation was to amend the bylaws to slightly increase the higher levels of dues. So to increase the sustaining level to $55 and the solidarity level to $105. And the bylaws change would be recommended at the annual meeting. The next recommendation is to create a volunteer chair. That would include also creating a committee. And the work of the chair and committee would be to identify possible jobs for volunteers and to publicize those volunteer opportunities and recruit folks to do them, and providing further information about these opportunities, like the time frame and the skills required and whatnot. That action was approved. The next recommendation was to explore the development of an endowment fund. as well as the consideration of a fund drive to help fill up the endowment fund. The action is for this motion to be considered in the future. And there was also some discussion regarding where some other items in the Labor History Society budget could perhaps allocate some money into this new endowment fund, while bearing in mind that money earmarked for specific purposes cannot be reallocated into the endowment fund. The next recommendation was the establishment of a finance committee to advise on investments and the design of accounts, also do development work, work with donors, and exploring other options such as CDs. That action was approved. Another recommendation was to compile job descriptions for what Ken and Judy are currently doing. And the action was that those job descriptions will be created. The next recommendation was to review and document the activities of the board committees. No action was taken on that yet. The next recommendation was to create a timeline of the annual cycle of society functions and activities, so to ensure that those functions and activities happen in a timely way, regardless of who is currently working or volunteering with Labor History Society at that time. And the committee did already create a timeline and submit it, which was accepted. The next recommendation was to further explore interns and work study programs. And the action that was taken was checking into the possibility of working with area schools, including the UWM Public History Program, the Eau Claire Public History Program. The next recommendation was exploring the possibility of hiring an executive director, which includes reviewing what Labor History Society is currently spending on staff, and then what we would need to spend on a part-time executive director, so that we have a clear idea of what that will necessitate with fundraising. And then in the discussion portion, it lays out what the personnel costs currently are, and then what the estimate would be if those positions were to transition into something new. And it does note that this would necessitate extra funds probably for a new position. The suggestions were to prepare job descriptions for the various positions, which would aid when the time comes in attracting someone for these positions. Draw up a job description so that it's ready to distribute when it becomes necessary to hire someone. Open to alternate staffing, perhaps attracting someone who'd be willing to start at a lower rate or for fewer hours, with the expectation that the position will expand, explore uses of volunteers, and the suggestion to hold a special board meeting within 6 weeks after this annual meeting to consider these specific recommendations. And then the last recommendation was to continue holding forums virtually. And that is the full report of the committee.
And I believe, Jacqueline, correct me if I'm wrong, that the full report has to go back to the board for final action, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. And so we're presenting it today for information purposes and for any input from people that are part of our annual meeting. So
This is Judy
there any-
Gatlin. We need to designate between the two Judys on this board. Somebody writes Judy and it's not designated, but it's Judy G or Judy B. So
I
that-
gotcha. Yeah.
In the chat, yeah.
Would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, any discussion or comments? All right, hearing none. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a bylaw change. And the bylaw change that we're considering is to allow an increase in the sustaining member dues from $50 to $55 and the solidarity dues from $100 to $105, with the provision to provide for donations beyond those amounts if people so desire. There was a lively discussion about the issue of dues, and certainly a resounding decision to keep our basic dues low. So the only adjustments that came forward in terms of the recommendation were these. So is there, first of all, a motion to go forward with the bylaw change, and a second? And then we'll have discussion.
I am trying.
Move to approve bylaw change to increase the dues as indicated.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. Any further discussion?
Sorry, Steve, just to capture it in the minutes. Sorry, EJ, what is your last name?
It's Beth Joswiak.
That's
Oh,
yeah, Elizabeth. Yeah. Any further discussion?
It's Judy over here. Can I raise an
Bernie.
issue? Yeah. I just have a question about, do we want to do this now, or would it be better to come up with an idea of how we're going to fund an executive director and then have a vote, vote once on changing the due structure instead of doing it now, which isn't going to yield all that much. It might be a good idea to have a small group report back on a due structure. Did I lose you, Steve? Did I do something wrong here? Hello?
Sorry, sorry, I had to step away there for a minute. My computer just notified me it was about to go down. So anyway.
Okay.
So I heard the beginning of Judy's comment, which was, in terms of where do we set the dues based on what the, what salary we might set, and we might want to tie the two together. I think that was certainly part of the discussion, and people seem pretty determined to make sure they kept the low, our basic dues low. So, but that's certainly somebody can make a motion to amend if they so desire. But
I mean, we are required because of action of the board to bring this matter before the annual meeting now. The only way we can make bylaw changes, and that's whenever we touch the dues, is we have to change our bylaws. So we need a vote up or down on the particular motion. We could amend it here and change it. If people were so desired.
Is there any amendment? Any further discussion? I'm sorry.
Further discussion. This is Judy. What was Jacqueline's Futures Committee? She had a point there about the executive director. Wouldn't this activity of what our annual budget is versus if we get some paid positions, wouldn't that fall within that committee? I mean, we can revise the budget at any time.
Well, right, and.
That's correct.
And I think what this bylaw change is looking to the future, starting next year. I don't expect we'll have any specific personnel needs prior to next year, but you never know, of course. And so I think I think the whole matter of what we want to do about staffing the organization will rest on a decision as how are we going to raise sufficient funds to pay for such a person. I think we did figure out in the futures committee report that if you paid a person $20 an hour for half time, you'd have, I forget what it is now, around $17,000 or $18,000, or was it more than that? But we can't afford that now. And so I think once we decide how we're going to handle, the fact of the case is that I am 91 years old and I'm quickly running out of steam, and it's time for my nap. So I think that we need to make a choice for the future as to what we can do, and of course Judy too. And so should we combine the jobs? Neither one of us view this as a permanent position. I think Judy can speak for herself, but she's in here also as a matter of love after her long years of experience in the labor movement.
Any further discussion?
Answer.
Yes?
Can you put up the screen, the current due structure and this motion?
I can't easily do that, John, but
Okay.
basically the current due structure is retirees and unemployed, $10 a year.
So I would change that. That's ridiculous to charge me $10 a year. I'm sorry. But
anyway,
I would amend that to much more. And do you have a life membership built in? I don't remember.
no, we do not. I will run down what our membership is. Retirees, unemployed, $10, individual membership, $20, family membership, $30, sustaining, $50, solidarity, $100. And we're only proposing here to raise the sustaining and solidarity by $5.
Yeah.
So this is not a major change.
And we
I
do,
think you need a more major change. I'm sorry.
we do have many retirees though that voluntarily join at the sustaining or higher levels. So.
Oh my God, yes. In fact, we are finding more and more people paying dues at the higher levels than pay at either the participant or the retirees. And but we kept the $10 in just for people having real problems with their cash.
I think that's wonderful. But
I'd like to call the question, please.
Yep.
Silly.
Question's been called. Any objection?
Nope.
All right. All those in favor of the motion
Agreed.
signify by
Aye.
saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay.
I oppose.
How many noes do we have?
Just one.
Two.
Two.
Okay. Motion carries. Unless you want to roll call.
No.
I don't think so.
All right.
Very funny. What union did you come out of that's so democratic?
Well, I thought you might want to make the meeting a little longer. I don't know.
I'm not. Ken looks tired. He needs to
Yeah.
nap and set
All
over.
right. All right, election of officers. Now's your opportunity to vote me out.
Yeah, please.
For a bad sense of humor. That's good grounds enough. All right, Judy Gatlin.
Thank you. Judy Gatlin, Chair of the Nominating Committee, and we have 2 board officers positions open, Secretary and President. So I will call nominations for President of the Wisconsin Labor History Society. And I believe you can self-nominate as well.
Well, I nominate Steve Caperi.
Second.
Need a second? You got it.
Yeah, you don't need a second.
You don't need a second, but. that's all
Is there
right.
any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Do you accept the nomination, Brother Steve?
Sure.
All right. All those in favor of Steve Caperi leading this organization?
Right.
Signify by
Aye.
saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. I get to hand it over to our new president then, right? Or do I run, you want me to run?
I
the
think
secretary?
normally we've had the chair of the committee do the whole
No, she
slate,
can't do.
doesn't she?
Like,
Oh, she can't?
I can do the secretary, but I'm up for reelection, so.
All right. All right, so do you want to do the secretary or not?
Sure. Is there any nominations for secretary?
Jacqueline Kelly.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Sister Jacqueline, do you accept the position?
You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I got it finally.
Great, great. All those in favor of instilling
Aye.
Jacqueline as our secretary, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, I hand it over to you, Steve.
And then we have several board nominations. Do you know how many, Ken? To be
Well, I
precise.
think Judy has the list there, so she can read them off at least.
All
I
right.
do?
There's,
No,
Um,
Judy Gatlin.
Oh,
so there's eight board members who are up for a 2-year term, and I did reach out to all of them, and they all said they would like to run again.
And they are,
Chris Berkeley,
okay.
Paul Siegler, Judy Gatlin, Jessica Gibson, Jillian Jacqueline, Ginger Jefferson, Anita Johnson, and Harvey Kay.
All right.
Anita and Ginger both were hesitant because they're both really involved with getting people registered to vote, and they will continue to be involved with that till the next election. But they said they would stay on. I encourage them to stay on because we have the virtual meetings and such. So I don't know what we do from there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone want to nominate, make a nomination? You could nominate the slate that was just mentioned that have already accepted nomination if someone wants to do that. So,
So moved.
all right, John, second? Or you don't need a second, right? Is there any other nominations? Any other nominations for board members? Any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. Is there a vote to accept and put in place the nominated board members by acclamation? Your motion to do so?
I make a motion to unanimously vote for all those people on the docket.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Welcome aboard. Looking forward to working with you again.
Judy, could you just quick run through that list so I can get it in the notes of those 8 folks?
How about I send it to you in an email, Jacqueline?
That's perfect, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other business before the society?
Steve?
Yes.
Hi, Steve. It's Ron Kent. I have a suggestion for the board to consider. We have a new superintendent of public instruction. And I think the society would be well served by setting up a meeting with her to engage her in the labor history in the schools to a higher level. Right now, most of these programs, as I understand them anyway, are voluntary and they vary all over the lot. And I would like to see us maybe have some input with the new superintendent of public instruction who is sympathetic to labor to make those kinds of standards more, foundational, let us say, for elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. And that the curriculum, we could help maybe create, and I know that David Newby's worked on this in the past, I have as well, set up a suggested curriculum for teachers, but that also the actual method would be that it would be made part of the social studies curriculum at various levels of public education in the state at a more solid level, not just voluntary, but rather maybe foundational. And so I'm asking the board to consider an initiative to approach our state superintendent and see if that would be possible.
Thanks, Ron. It's interesting you mentioned that because Ken and I were just talking about this last week. My wife is active in terms of AAPI issues in the state. And she has reached out to the chair, or I guess she's vice president right now, of the social studies organization, who happens to be a Shorewood teacher. In fact, she was our daughter's teacher. And she's willing to work with them, and they've explored what some of the barriers are to getting something like having greater coverage for Asian and Pacific Islander issues in public schools. And at the same time, we've talked about labor issues.
Yeah.
And so Ken and I are going to pick this up, and we're on it, and we appreciate your suggestion, and we'll see what we can do, and we'll report back to you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. I just want to add something briefly. We did pass, the law in 2009, the only state that has done something like that, except I guess Connecticut now. But the law did state that the teaching of labor history be included in the core curriculum of the state of Wisconsin. And we did establish some things like that while Governor Doyle was still in the seat. And then frankly, it was going to go forward, but Scott Walker suddenly was there. And to be honest with you, we decided to kind of keep it. So the law is there to do what you say. And we did develop a curriculum with the State Historical Society, with DPI around 2006 and the State AFL-CIO, and that's still available. So there's a lot of groundwork done. It's a matter of putting a fire into the new DPI person, and I think that's a great suggestion.
And the governor's office too.
It's a great time because she's, new.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
I think that would really help promote our essay contest and History Day projects.
Absolutely. And I
Excellent.
think
Yep.
Jim Kavanaugh has done a wonderful job of putting together a set of curriculum for teachers. And I just want to pay credit to him for his outstanding work in that area. And David Newby has done yeoman work as well here. And I think I just want to urge you to continue on that path of using these great resources that we have to bring history, and especially film. It's another thing we have it's a visual culture. And I think that we have to pay attention to films that grab the attention of students on the question of labor history. And I'm sure David Knack is listening, and he has a whole series of films that he uses in his teaching. But I think the idea would be to integrate greater amounts of visual kinds of elements into the curriculum. So thank you for considering this suggestion.
Great suggestions. Yep. We'll make sure and follow up with it. I think as Kent mentioned, one of our big concern is when the Republicans controlled both the Assembly and the Senate and the governor's office, we were very concerned that they just strip the law, take it out. And so we didn't want to give them the opportunity to do it, given everything else they had done. So, but now's the time to move. So thank you so much for bringing this up and having this discussion. Any other items we should talk about?
Judy G, did you have something?
No, I'm just getting all excited about this.
Okay.
But so you're saying, if I understand it, you're saying, you don't want to bring this to the attention of our Republican-controlled administration.
No,
No.
I think now is fine because we do have a governor, right, who can veto.
Yeah.
And we do have DPI. But
Okay.
in the discussion that my wife Lorna has had, with the other topic, Walker did put in place some barriers to implementing the kinds of progressive education that we'd like to see in schools, not just labor, but also with respect to, Asian studies, et cetera.
I did not know that. I did not know that. I know we had Act 43. I believe that's the number for
basically
First Nation people.
Yeah, as I understand it, despite the fact that there is an act, he's also put in place provisions that just allow local school districts to make up their own mind in terms of what to do in terms of education.
Now I got more to dislike him about.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, thank you.
So anyway, and that's blocked, education in African American studies and all sorts of other things as well. So it's not just us that's impacted by this. So, and there's a number of strategies that other organizations have used through the Wisconsin Association of School Boards to try and get things done. I don't know that is going to work for us in terms of the School Boards Association, but there are other strategies, and we do have certainly a good ally in terms of our lieutenant governor in terms of moving things too. So thanks so much for the discussion. Anything else? If nothing, is there a motion to adjourn?
Hello, I'd like to ask you one small little question, a parochial one. Did you get the booklet I sent to you on the Dublin lockout in 1913?
Yep.
You did get it. That's great. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
And we'll keep the chat. We'll keep the whatever we're doing here open for a while, because I know a couple of you wanted to carry on conversations after the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I'd like to thank everybody for participating today. And looking forward to seeing you at our conference in November and at our future meetings.
Over permitting.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's carried. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks,
did you-
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you for sticking around. Yeah. So, John, I think you wanted to have something to say. I don't know if anybody else did, but we're
I
here.
imagine you're exhausted. Steve's pretty young compared to you and I. So let other people go first, but I did have too many things. And we could redo something another time. Doesn't have to be now. And you could see me slouching because I'm ready for my nap.
Okay. Well, anyway,
But I do have a list of things, and I would just as well do some of it now, but not if you guys are. I did a Zoom yesterday, and so I understand being exhausted after.
Well, anyway, you did put something in the chat about the 100th anniversary of Workers Education Local 189, and
Oh, yeah.
and Brookwood College, which was founded, I think, in 2020. I mean, in 1920.
No, 1922.
Oh, 22. Okay.
100th anniversary.
Yeah.
I can go first, but I was gonna let Eddie, and you got Hugh also there.
So does anybody else have anything to say before? I guess not. So, okay, John, that's it then. So, but you did.
Yeah, I did write that, and I had other notes. I can go as quick as possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know I'm not quick.
Yeah, but you got to be quick now.
You're tired. So
No, that's
anyways,
okay.
I helped coordinate an event yesterday, a Zoom event. It's similar number, but it changed over the 2 hours we did it, of who was there, of people who work mostly, well, union and university worker and labor educators. We did kind of a reunion and preparation for 100th anniversary of Brookwood Labor College and Worker Education Local 189 coming up next year. So I wanted to let a couple of you know that's in the works. And if you know labor film at all, you know there was a movie about the Flint sit-down strike called With Babies and Banners.
Right.
And Lynn Goldfarb, a friend who at one point lived in Michigan, helped make that. And we talked recently about maybe looking into whether or not we could do something in preparation or out of this 100th anniversary.
Yeah, that would be a good idea, and it might be something that our U.S. Canada group could work on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good thought.
So that was one thing I was going to say.
The UAW might join us on that too.
What?
I mean, I said the UAW might join us on that too. John Drew has, done some joint projects with us.
Well, so among the 40 people that were part of this Zoom I coordinated, which was kind of a reunion for Worker Ed Local 189, UCLA and UAL leaders, was Dave Elsela. Kenny would know well because they both were editors of their international union papers.
Yeah, I know Dave, of course.
Yeah, I remember him.
And he's still active in the Michigan Labor History Society, which I mentioned earlier, kind of grew out of the Illinois one. If any of your historians were still here, I was going to tell them Commons is so important, and there's no reason to apologize for Commons or any of his colleagues and what was done with Commons and what Suppos, Perlman, Eli, a lady named Liz Brandeis. I don't know if she's related to Louis.
The spring
Anyways,
forecasters, yeah.
Yeah.
Wisconsin labor movement and the labor history stuff out of Wisconsin is like, it's so important in American unionism and labor history. You
Yeah,
guys-
that was the kind of the point that we were trying to make there, that there's all kind of, a lot of it started with people like Commons and the Wisconsin labor movement and the strong socialist and progressive combination, which they didn't mention the fact that we got that progressive legislation done by a collaboration between the progressives, who are basically Republican and rural, and the socialists, who were urban and labor. And so that's why we got some of that revolutionary stuff done in the early 20th century. So, but anyway, I think
not for a long time, the new left historians didn't appreciate how important that was. I mean, if you look at it in comparison to today, labor was barely existent at the time Commons and all those folks were writing, which is kind of like anybody writing about labor history today.
yeah, right. Well, anyway, so
Anyway, I'll move right along. I'm almost done. So an offshoot is this history of labor education, worker education. And Wisconsin School for Workers was major in this. That's where I got my training. I think it's by my visits with them and with the AIW that I get to know Germanson and all kinds of people. And I think Michigan benefited a lot. So I'm almost done. I'll quit. That's okay.
well, listen, that's all very, that's true. And I think you made the point. Well, okay, this was,
Good point.
I think it would turn out to be a halfway decent meeting even if the technology was screwed up.
Oh, Kenny, so I told you I did this North American Conference of Worker Education, Local 189 UCLA and UALE leaders as a kind of reunion and getting prepared for 100th anniversary and what might we do. And a few minutes before the end, I got tapped out. And I was gone because I hadn't paid